Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show. I've got a couple of guests today, and Denis Laviolette and Stefan Sklepowicz. I couldn't
Yes,
say
Alan, there we go.
it. And they're part of Kirkland Lake Discoveries, and I'm very excited about Kirkland Lake Discoveries. And I'm really happy to have both Denny and Stefan on. Denny from an undisclosed location in Spain.
Yeah, okay, so Alan, I'm going to blow a little bit of smoke up your yin yang here for a sec. Thank you so much for having us on. It's really a real pleasure. I was just having lunch with Mr. Eric Sprott, and we were chatting, and your name came up, and Kirkland Lake Discoveries came up, and he mentioned that he had read a piece that you had put together on the company describing the project and sort of the orogenic goal potentially. Says you got a hell of a real estate package. He goes, I never really it really never really dawned on me until I read Alan's piece, and I thought, well, that's cool. I'm going to be speaking with Alan later, but B, there you go, Alan. You got a good audience, man.
Well, I hope to get Eric on my show someday. Maybe I can help get you to twist his arm to come on my show.
Well, you never know. I definitely have to twist his arm to come on mine. So, I can certainly put in a good word.
Well, it's nice to hear that he's paying attention to the work I do. I do a lot of work. I think I'm one of the hardest working content creators out there. Sort of a one-man show, and good to see that Eric Sprott's paying attention.
Well, hey, I mean it's a good, like I said, good audience.
Good audience.
So
Well, you
yeah,
guys have a good audience because he's cutting a check for your latest private placement.
yeah, we're really grateful about that. We've got a tremendous amount of outstanding support. Steph, I'm sorry, I'm talking over probably my
All
my
good,
my
man.
colleague here, Steph,
Take it
and
and
really
run.
he deserves all the credit, Alan. Honestly, all the credit to Steph on this. And it's funny enough. We put out. I'll give you an example. When we put out the visual results for the Winnie Lake stuff, and like good word travels fast, I guess. And to me, it's kind of a profound. This financing is really the epitome of it, but it's a profound situation in the capital markets right now. Maybe it's a sign of the times. Maybe it's because things are so bullish, but the number of high quality, top shelf people that organically, unsolicited, came forward, Eric Sprott included, being like, hey, tell me more about this Kirkland Lake Discoveries. What the heck did you get there? I'm reading this release, and do I own any of it? Like, you didn't really realize you owned a lot of it, and it's insane. And it's not just Eric. I mean, obviously there's an ocean of sort of high powered, influential, and big check writer type people
Yeah,
that have heard
I
about
was
this
just
through the.
talking to Rob McEwen last night, and we were talking about KLDC as well, and he thinks it's a real undiscovered gem. And I'm in your camp, Denny. I love the way Stefan and his team are using digital marketing and sharing and bringing people into this exciting business. Sometimes I think that this business gets really stale. Like you put out a news release, we're drilling. Months go by, here's the results. And that doesn't really bring the audience of shareholders into the process of treasure hunting. And so I applaud sharing drill results, showing the core. I mean, at the end of the day, investors are paying for it. The shareholders are the ones paying for it. So why not bring them in? It doesn't give you any guarantee of what's going to come out in the assays, but I know what sulfides look like. Other people know what sulfides look like, and I hope more people learn. what sulfides look like. And Stefan, you're doing a great job on that front.
I really appreciate that, Alan, and it's important to me because I've been on the other side for so many years where you invest in a story and okay, drilling's starting, and then 6 months later they finally put out results, and that's the only communication they've had in that time. And I'm like, what the hell happened? And they've like, oh, we pivoted over here as well, by the way, and it's what I love about the approach that we're doing is that the communication that I get to have with the shareholders now is all about sharing the excitement of what we're doing and the steps that we're taking instead of me talking them through the steps of what we're working on, and this is where we've gotten to and this is the next step. So I'll get calls from shareholders, and they're celebrating what they saw in the video instead of what the hell are you up to, how are you spending my money type of thing. So to me, and I think it's a reason that we've had the success that we've had over the last 8 weeks realistically, where we've had the big run. It's because people understand what's going on, they understand the thesis, they understand the work that we're doing. It's we've delivered exactly what we've said we were doing, and you can document that through these last 10 months realistically that we've been doing this video series. So you can go back and you can look at day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, and see exactly what we said we were going to do. And you come out at the end of it being like, here it is. This is exactly what we said we were going to do. And so the trust is built. People are understanding of that. And now we're doing it again on a way bigger scale going forward, which is the incredibly exciting part about the support that we've gotten with this financing. So
Well, I've been a big proponent of digital marketing. I think companies need to get on top of it. And we are in a very exciting business. We're treasure hunters. We're poking holes in the ground to find treasures. And that's tremendously exciting. But sometimes I think the old school way of doing things is just got to go out the door and get with the times. I wanted to ask you guys, what brought the two of you together? Either one of
Uh,
you, Stefan and Denny.
Maybe I'll let Steph answer that one.
Denis and I have had a lifetime together. So him and I met when we were 5 years old, became fast friends, and over the years, always stayed in touch. We have a really interesting group of friends. We have kind of a group of between 20 and 30, and we get together once or twice a year. These guys that have all become majorly successful. It's just this unique group of awesome characters, and the way that I came into mining was Denis obviously has a geology degree. One of my other best friends has a geology degree, and I remember when they switched or were in that, I was like, man, I think that's the coolest field to be working in. I was like, you guys are literally treasure hunting. I was like, this, I might make a switch too, so I can come along for the ride. And at the time, you have commitments and everything else, and so you don't do it. I played it safe. But the turning point for me was in 2020 when the world came to a halt, and that was a turning point for me because my business got shut down. I'd been operating businesses for kind of 10-15 years at that point in time. And I'd been a junior mining investor through at that time. So I was well aware of the space. I saw what was happening with the printing of money. And I was like, this is not going to go well over the next 10-20 years. Like we're in for a world of hurt with, you can't print $3 trillion at a time and expect nothing to happen. And so I reached out to Denis and I said, do you have any good, picks? And then I laid out my macro thesis, and he was like, I didn't realize you had, this level of understanding of the markets. Like, have you ever considered, like, do you want to make a switch? Do you want to, come work for me? And I was like, oh man, I'm like, are you crazy? Like, I don't know. No, no. And, I slept on it. And the next day I was like, my God, I want this so bad. I'm like, yeah, let's do it. And I like called him back. I was like, let's go. Started at the bottom with Gold Spot, learned all the ins and the outs of exploration from their team of incredible experts, and the rest is history. So
Well, you guys
Yeah,
are a good team.
I
Denise,
want to add a little color to that
okay.
story, if you don't mind. I think the audience would like it. And I do want to come back to the video thing because I think this is really important. So Steph's always been an overachiever his whole life, and he's probably not going to sell himself that way. His dad was my grade 12 science teacher, a really smart guy, really good teacher, and and his dad was a junior mining investor as well, by the way. Just I don't
Still
think Steph
is.
mentioned it, but he was like an
Still is.
avid, like always obscure names that you've never heard of, but he's like always playing in the, sort of like junior mining sphere. So Steph from time to time would be texting me, my dad's interested in this one. What do you think? That sort of thing. So long story short, Steph joined. So I'll just pick up where Steph took off there with when he joined. And sometimes you just know people that are really smart in your life and are really capable, and you don't know exactly what they're going to do, but it's worth doing. And so I had to justify it to my business partners too. But we did need gophers. We did need help. Like we were, our business was growing, and we needed help. And I was like, Steph's going to be great. I didn't tell everybody in the core company that him and I were childhood friends. But I did tell CJ and Matt and the sort of like the lieutenants on the high up, just to get everybody's blessing that, it's okay to bring in a friend. But I was like, man, listen, he's super smart, super capable. I swear he'll shine. Right. And if he doesn't, that's fine. We'll cut him loose. No big deal. And that's the arrangement I had, Steph. And he came in and he latched in with Sean Hood. And Sean won't mind me saying this. Sean was leading the data science group that's now at ALS. So now he's running the whole ALS geoscience group there.
Yeah.
And so Sean, Dr. Shawnee Hood, is probably one of the best geos out there that I had ever met. And he was quick to grab Steph. He's like, I need help. And so who's this Stefan guy? Can I take him? Can I use him? I go, sure. And so he was quick to grab Steph. And it wasn't long after that. And again, I gave Sean no background, by the way.
Okay.
And it wasn't long after that. He goes, how much are we paying this guy? We got to pay him more. He's doing this for me. Like no one can make good, like he's making the best maps. Before I knew it, Steph was like a pro at ArcGIS and, and map making, and he was making beautiful maps for Sean and the Gold Spot team. And then we bought the geophysics division and we started to build that out. We had the chopper, the instrumentation, and we had some drone survey equipment. Steph went and got licensed, got a drone, got into the droning surveying business, ended up kind of doing that, working with those guys, making the imagery, delivering the product. So he was getting in there. Then we had a private company called Golden Planet that we incorporated, and we raised 13 mil for. We still have, of course. Golden Planet being a sort of a collaborative investment with some different concepts, and that has projects in Northwest Territories, BC. It had projects abroad, and we were basically, we needed permitting, we needed drilling. So Steph was negotiating deals with First Nations, submitting the assessment claim reports. He was getting in there. Like you could not put. Even the Northwest Territories, you got to do a fly-in camp, fly in the fuel, get all the people out there, organize all the shit. Sorry for swearing on your pod.
Oh, it's okay.
Basically, all that stuff. And this guy's like a hot knife through butter. And everybody he comes into contact loves him. Everybody he's worked with, like, I couldn't be more proud and thankful that it ended up reflecting. Sometimes, you work with friends and it doesn't reflect well on you. And I think with Steph, it's been the opposite. And so when we took over this Kirkland Lake project and this idea, we knew we needed a CEO. And I was like, Steph, I honestly think you should do this. And he's like, I don't feel really super comfortable. I think I need a few more reps under my belt before I could do something like this. I was like, yeah, I don't think you do, man. I think you're good. I think you're all right. And the competition out there is not the best, and you'll be, trust me, fine. And so again, not without his challenges. So he had a lot of challenges and hurdles in front of him. Limited cash, etc. Big, huge land package, lots going on, First Nations groups to square off with and get everything done with, and keep everything copacetic with, and all that sort of stuff. And he did all that beautifully. Like it was like easy. He's buddies with the chiefs. Like they hang out.
Well, I
So
love hearing that because I have a lot of parallels with Stefan. I'm not a geologist. Everybody thinks I'm a geologist. And I thank all my great mentors for doing that, but it also came from my thirst for knowledge. And, it's amazing that there's so many good people in the industry that it's like they're hungry to have someone to mentor. And like Bob Barnett in geochemistry, he did all the geochemical work for the Diavik diamond mine. He and I actually wrote a paper. I'm not a geologist, and I'm a peer-reviewed author of a paper, co-writer of a paper on the importance of unique indicator minerals in diamond exploration. And I had a guy, Genna McDowell, who was the one time the world exploration manager for Anglo. He was my mentor in geophysics, and then I've had just a slew of great mentors in geology. And I can now play a geologist on the internet.
well, look, I mean, it's an industry, Alan. I think, like even me, for instance, as a geologist, um, I went to university for it. I did co-op in university, so I was exposed to the industry side quickly. And I recall my first job was Kirkland Lake Gold. And I got to site, and in university, you learn about all the different rocks, and you learn about all the different, minerals and how they form, and the crystal structures, and the this and the that, and all the shit, right, and all the theory behind everything. But really, when you get there, there's like redite, greenite, blueite, and fucking yellowite, and then there's like the quartz veins, and you realize there's like probably 5 or 6 major lithologies,
Yep.
on a property. Then there's some structure, some geometry to things. It doesn't anybody can figure that out. And then,
I always call
alteration.
them cracks in the earth. That's what the fluids need to make their way up. And we're going to talk about that
Totally.
when we get into the corporate presentation. But I try to make everything simple, Denny.
Yeah, no, 100%. And that's what I guess what I'm saying is that, like, once you get in there, and then all of a sudden, like I remember Kirkland Lake, it was like a cyanide, and then there was like a lapilli tooth, and then there was like a tuff, and and then there's people that are like, "Ooh, you know what a tuff is?" I go, "I don't know. I don't remember that from school. I wasn't the best student in the world. Okay, like, yeah, I'll look it up later.
Yeah.
But it's this shit. Okay, got it. Okay, so everything I see that looks like this, I'm going to call tough. And realistically, at the end of the day, it's good to have that geological background from university, whatever, but it's not at all necessary to be an explorationist, and it's not at all
Sometimes I think,
necessary
Denny,
to work at a high level in the industry at all.
I think that the university teaches you the jargon, but doesn't
That's it.
teach you the rocks. It's
Yeah.
all about the rocks.
Well, the jargon you learn quick anyway. Like it's like
Exactly.
capital markets. I didn't do a CFA or an MBA or any of that, but I can cut it up with anybody on that,
Yeah.
right? And I just learned on the job, right? Like I'm
Well,
not.
Stefan, I thought you were a geologist when you were showing your core and everything like that. So your mentors have taught you well, and it really does my heart good as a First Nations person myself to hear your outreach to the First Nations. And I think a lot of times in this industry, people don't really understand how entrepreneurial First Nations people are. We may have traded things differently, but we were traders for a long time. And
Totally.
another thing is, and Stefan, I hope you take this for what it's worth. I think that the First Nations youth have inherent talents when it comes to rocks. And I would strongly encourage you to try to get those kids out on the ground. And like I share a story, I think I've shared it with both of you, and I'll share it for the new people, that my great grandfather, he had a trap line for 60 years. And if you had gone to him and said, "Have you ever seen this kind of rock?" He would take you to the exact location where he saw it, even if he saw it 25 years ago. And so
Totally.
I've always had this dream that, the First Nations youth can be out there on the ground being prospectors. They just need to be shown what to look for. So, Stefan, I'm glad to hear you got such a great relationship with the First Nations. And if you ever need my help in being a guy, a First Nations guy who's made his business for 32 years in the mining business, I will be an encourager. So you got that
Well, I
opportunity.
have to add a little color to that too, Alan, because we have we one of the guys on our team, he's a geologist helper, Allan. He was part of our field crew, and he, they're going through different things and talking, and he's like, I'm pretty sure I know where there's a really good outcrop. My wife and I, we were talking, and anyways, just come with me. And they go into the bush, and sure enough, there's this beautiful quartz vein that has visible copper in it, and we're just like, oh, okay. So yeah, no, it's all about creating the opportunities and working in conjunction. I'm a down to earth guy. It's all about
And
let's just figure out what
encouragement.
works.
Sometimes I think it just needs a guy like me or a guy like you to say, hey, you've got this is in your blood, man. Just geology is old-fashioned geology is walking around and looking down.
Yeah.
And you teach them how to walk around and what to look for. And I think there's tremendous talent that's untapped in the First Nations youth that I'd love to be part of. It's always been a dream of mine.
Well, hopefully
I,
this is the market that's going to be long enough to allow them to build some careers. I think it's going to be.
It's going to be.
I want to expand that too, because I agree completely with the First Nations youth for sure. But I think any youth, if anybody out there that you love this treasure hunting game, this scratches your itch, this is your thing, you can do it too. You can get in
Yeah,
this business and you can make a mark really fast because
absolutely.
it's a weird business this way. Like it does reward hard work. It rewards passion. And whether it's rewarded because your passionate ideas are able to convince other people to invest in you, to pursue that passion, or whether that passion just leads to more work that you do and harder and better work that you do that ends up rewarding you. No matter what, if you got passion for this game of treasure hunting, of finding something that you really want to make that mark on the world, this is you. It doesn't matter what career path you've chosen, what upbringing you've had, you can do it. Now, back to your First Nations bit. Allan Keats
Yeah,
out in Newfoundland. Allan's a
yeah.
Mi'kmaq, the First Nations, and one of the few remaining. And Allan's a goddamn beauty. And that Allan, that's exactly Allan. I saw a boulder there 30 years ago, and the water level was down this year, so I could finally got a sample offer. I've been staring at her for 30 years, and it's unbelievable. This guy knows where everything is, and he's walked it all, and same thing. But he's getting older now. Poor Al, and at the end of the day, we need younger guys like that coming up and doing
Absolutely.
it. But there was a
Well,
place for it too. Alan, like Noranda and Falconbridge, there was these big regional explorers
yeah.
where they really built prospectors. I think,
We
having
got to get
people,
back in that as an industry, is building up
I
those
know,
prospectors. I remember the day, like you're talking
totally,
about some Newfoundland legends there. The Stairs family,
yeah.
same thing. They came from walking around and looking down and well, I guess we should get into your company a little bit. We've been promoting the hell out of the business and treasure hunting. Let me do a screen share. And Denny, remind me before we close to talk more about that the video stuff and the digital marketing. But let me pull up your. I recently did a show and I talked about what I liked, and I kind of always I'm a big proponent of people doing their homework. And so I started this series recently called Digging Deeper. And, I show people how I go about doing my homework. And one of them I hope you guys can see is looking at a corporate presentation. and not just reading it, but really looking at it and understanding what they're saying. And right off the bat here, and Denny and both of you can speak to this, is that everybody says they have a district scale discovery potential. And we're going to get into why that's true here. But why don't you talk a little bit about that, Denny? You're a classic district scale guy.
Yeah. So right off the cuff, so district, like a district to me means you have the entirety, or at least a very large possibility of a multitude of deposits being found. It's a land package that encapsulates a large enough region of prolific endowed rocks, or potentially prolifically endowed rocks, that could result in a multitude of deposits being discovered. I think that would be the primary definition if I was to create one for what I would call a district potential. Now, oftentimes people equate that to land package size, which you can do because the footprint of a deposit by and large is quite small. You know,
Right.
most deposits can sit inside of a couple of kilometers, let's say, or even a half a kilometer. Like they're not, in terms of footprint, they're not overly large. But the district itself, a larger land package that can grow, you can envision this thing, you know, somebody finding the first deposit, creating a mine, but then having enough neighboring land and showings and potentials to grow that, and you know, have another production center at some later point in the existence of that property and that project and that effort. And I think that for me, that is what stood out at the bear market. So in 2013, 2014, right,
Yeah.
when the asshole fell out of mining, basically, excuse my French again on the show.
Oh, it's
Uh,
okay. Yeah.
you ended up with the projects that were the most resilient, and the projects that companies did end up acquiring, by and large, were always district scale plays.
Yep.
And even I'll give you an example of one that was acquired that didn't make a ton of noise. Was one that was acquired by Yamana. So Yamana, you had a major company, okay, acquiring what was the project was called? It was Yamana had bought. Oh, come on, it was just on the tip of my tongue. Mega Precious in
Okay.
northern Manitoba. Now, Mega Precious was a multi-million ounce deposit, district-sized land package, mostly gold and tungsten, right? It was trading around 20 or 30 million, right? Market cap, I believe at the time. I think it got taken out but for like a 50% premium or 30% premium. Nothing phenomenal. But what it showed you was, what the hell is this company, a major company, you know, coming in and feasting on the, you know, the pieces of the market that are left over, and there's only one thing they care about, and it's district scale plays. And if you look at a major company's production profile, a tier one asset, a lot of like analysts and people think they know what that means. A tier one asset, I was actually just talking to Eric about that. Trust me, I've had many in-depth conversations with the leadership of literally all the major mining companies, right?
Yep.
In the gold space. And one of the things that sticks out is, you know, I always sort of ask them, you know, what do they consider a tier one deposit? And it's not an ounce count thing. Somewhere along the line, people said, well, it has to produce 300,000 ounces a year. That's what they consider. That's like sort of an easy way to define it, right? But it's not, that's oversimplified. What it really means, what they want to see, is that they want to see 300,000 ounces of aggregate annual production potential, let's say, but it doesn't have to happen all at once. Like, for instance, if you have a big district, they could envision having a primary deposit over here. That's the first thing that was discovered, and that goes into production. And then a secondary deposit being discovered later, or drilled out later and eventually put into production, and so on and so forth. So they could see longevity at a place, you know, the longevity to set up a big mill and a camp and
To
office
me,
building and all the goodies.
it's about having free cash flow machines of mines. That's my thing.
Sure,
I like low capex, fast payback, big IRR. I think we get too wrapped up sometimes in these distinctions. I put this map up there, Stefan, and because it shows one of the greatest gold camps in the world, one of the great districts of the world. Here's the
sure.
Abitibi folks, and look at all these fabulous mines all over the place. And Kirkland Lake is one of the key with 30 million ounces of gold endowment. Is that why you got in there, Stefan?
It's certainly what brought us there in the first place. The beautiful thing about the Kirkland Lake endowment is the majority of that is along the Larder Lake crack, and that created dogma in the camp that basically said there's no gold north of here. Don't bother looking. So there was kind of piecemeal exploration in the Blake River group of rocks, and the on the Quebec side of the border, there's so much more exploration that's been done, and they found incredible deposits. And so, things like Horn Mine and Cumont, that those are the things that got me really interested in this camp. These massive, deep deposits, um, big systems. And you look at the map and you go, okay, well, why are there all these on this side and this imaginary border that some person drew up between Ontario and Quebec through this geological package, and all of a sudden they stop. It's like, no way.
Well, actually, Allan, on that point, if you want to skip to the next slide, just to reinforce Steph's point, sorry to step on you, Steph.
No, all good.
Okay, so right here, this is it right here. This
Okay,
is what gets me
folks,
excited. This
here is the blue is all of Kirkland Lake Discoveries ground.
Okay,
I'll let you
see
go.
that vertical line that transects the Blake River rocks? Right. Okay, so that's the Ontario-Quebec border. Now, you notice how on the Quebec side, there's like way more shit going on. There's like way more, stuff, right? Like
Details.
geology. Yeah,
Yeah,
there's a lot more like geology going on. Okay. And the Ontario side just kind of looks like a lot more green,
yeah,
right? And
all
there's really not a
green.
lot going on. Okay, so that's total bullshit. That is totally and utterly, okay, a fabric of way more data being collected on the Quebec side. So it's a data density bias problem. So what you have is you have way more broad data sets being collected on the Quebec side of the border and
So,
less
folks,
data.
what Denny is saying is that the more work you do, the more data you have, and the more detail you can put onto a geological map like this. It doesn't mean that this doesn't continue over here. It just means that there's more data over here.
Bingo. And so basically north of the break into the Blake River rocks, which is the green, that larger green, group. Um, the bottom of that is the Larder Lake break, right? That's the big crack that everyone loves, and when we hear about that's called the Cadillac fault, the
Larder.
Larder Lake break, right? Or the Cadillac, as they call it in Quebec, or the Cadillac Larder. You've heard all of the variants of this, but it's basically the Cadillac fault. Okay,
And
that's
folks,
the
by
big
the way,
that's the big crap.
what that is like Denny says, it's a crustal crack in the earth that goes very deep. And these are the conduits that fluids that contain metals use as a path of least resistance. Now, I think what Denny's going to get to is that it's not just those big cracks that are important. It's the cracks that are secondary to those big cracks in the earth because you've got the deep ones, and then you get closer and you get these secondary ones.
Yeah, that's true. So where I was going to go with it though is that you know there's actually another big one. Okay, and it was identified. So we were really we were really lucky. We were paying attention to this. So I don't know if you remember this, Allan. Merck. Do you remember the Merck program, Metals Earth program?
Yes, yep.
It was a combined project between industry and universities in Canada. And the idea of the program was to do seismic surveys and deep penetrating MT over magnetotelluric surveys over the most prolific metal endowments in the country. So they did a couple big surveys in like Red Lake, and they did a couple of big surveys in Kirkland Lake, and so on, and Val-d'Or and beyond, and in other districts too, Sudbury, etc., to really try to image at depth what makes these parts of the crust so unique. Why is there so much metal in these places? That's the ultimate question they wanted to ask. And so it was a $77 million program funded by government, universities, and industry. Okay. The results started to trickle into that via 2014, 2015, when we started acquiring all this ground. Right. And the reason that we got that block to the east, right? So if you want to look at the eastern block, right?
Oh, right here.
So,
Yeah.
right. So that straddles another major fault that was picked up in this survey and shared similar fingerprints to the Cadillac fault.
Okay.
And it's called the Malvern Lake Mist Lake Fault System. And along that, it was imaged to like 20 kilometers. Like they literally were looking through the entire crust right down to the goddamn mantle, right?
Right.
And you could literally see the Cadillac Fault in cross section and what it looks like all the way down there. And then you could see this secondary feature. And adjacent to the secondary feature, you have a lot of these ancillary deposits. So we're talking about like in the Blake River Rock specifically, we're talking about Agnico's Upper Beaver Mine. We're talking about Upper Canada. There's a whole plethora of historic showings and other features that are available. And that fault, if you zoom in to that image that you're looking at now, so you see those two faults there? You got the Mist Lake and
So
Malvern.
here's the Malvern Lake. Here's the Sema Mist Lake Fault.
So at depth, at like a kilometer deep, they become one fault.
Yeah.
And then, or something like that. And then beyond that, there's just one big ass fault. But then they bifurcate. So we ended up trying to stake as much as we could of both of them to the Quebec border.
Okay.
So that was like the concept of like getting that district. So we're talking about how do you assemble a district right now? You need big ideas, and that was the big idea.
Got it.
Right? And if you extend that fault back, it does trend towards the Cadillac, okay? So that does go back to the main break.
So it comes and connects over here somewhere.
Yeah, just probably around Macassa.
Okay.
The other side, Allan. So towards Kirkland Lake, it comes down that way.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. So I see what you mean there. Okay.
Yeah, so she comes right down, and then it, Macassa's along the 04 break, which is a splay. The amalgamated break would be considered the main break in the Macassa story. So if you just go on the south side of the mine, it's called the amalgamated break. That's would technically be the positioning of the main break. Or when we say break, we mean fault, so you can understand the cracks, right?
Cracks, yeah.
Now, when you zoom in, the picture always gets a little more complicated, right? Like, so that when you zoom out and you talk big picture, it can be quite simple, but then you start zooming in and the details start to come in, right? So here, there's just a plethora of stuff. Now, if you go down, I think one more slide, right?
Yeah.
There you go. This is helpful. So then you can sort of get a sense of all of the different showings and occurrences that exist. And you can see a lot of the shafts that we have on our land package, a lot of the different things. Like you've got the Labyrinth Gold just on the Quebec edge of the border there. There's a deposit up there, happens to plot directly on the Malvern Lake Fault. In fact, it is the Malvern Lake Fault being directly mineralized and impregnated with gold. And so that's a quartz vein rich gold system on the Malvern Lake Fault, right on the other side of the border, on the Quebec side of the border.
Over here.
And so right there, yeah. And I don't think it's particularly a large deposit. It was owned by like an Australian junior or something at some point.
Still is, yeah.
But nonetheless, it's interesting. But what it does is it validates the fault. So now you've got this Merck program saying, hey, listen, this other big crack matters. And then you do some more digging and some more looking, and then all of a sudden, holy shit, yeah, there's actually deposits on this thing. And then you go, well, this part in Ontario is totally wide open. Why don't we grab all that?
So, folks, here's a good sort of stresses what I was talking about. Here is the Cadillac Larder break or deep crack. You've got a mine here right on it. But then look at these secondary faults, KL main break, and look at the all the showings all over the place. Same thing over here. You keep following this one, Missima Mist. These are the cracks that you need to have the fluids juice up the rocks near surface. Look at all the
Yeah.
showings in close proximity.
Now, if you looked at the claim staking and work history of the camp, it was basically straddling that big fault, right? Which is like the Larder Lake Cadillac Deformation Zone, LLDC, right there, right?
Yeah.
CDZ. That's quite the acronym. So basically, all of the work was done straddling. But then you go to the Quebec side, and they're off in the north side, like they're not off in the into the Blake River rocks, and that's where you have some of the most world class deposits that define Rwanda and the Val-d'Or camp as
Mhm.
a whole. You got La Ronde, you've got Horn, and the list goes on. There's incredible deposits there,
So
and
basically, we
so
want to make this look like this.
correct,
Bingo.
correct. And you'd say, well, why don't you get more ground? And it's like, well, Jesus, I mean, we've got 53 kilometers, I guess, according to this thing, 53 kilometers of strike on this, and then what is it, like 40,000 hectares, 38,000 hectares? It's like an
40,000.
impossibly large piece of land to explore as it stands. So yeah, I mean, in a dream world, if I had infinite money, I'd stake the whole goddamn thing and go and look for more stuff. But you can't be all things to everything. So we're starting with what we got.
One of the things that got me really excited about this, knowing what I do about orogenic gold systems and the complexity of the structures and the bends in those structures, and is this area right here. Look at all that juicy gold. It looks like a classic orogenic gold system to me.
It definitely is, Allan. And one of the things that we're really excited about right now is we're doing an MT survey. So helicopter MT survey is flying as we speak. Helicopters in the air. They've already started collecting data, and it's going over this entire area. And the MT survey will take us down to 2 kilometers with
Wow.
definition. So we'll see all the cracks that are around there. There's definitely a juicy system there. And what
Oh,
I'm hoping is it's another one of those parallel ones where there's a bigger source, because when you get 561 grams per ton over a half meter of
yeah.
gold, that's a big deal. So
Keep
it's
drilling.
it's finding
100
more of
grams,
that.
21 grams, 56 grams. It's everywhere. And look at all the complexity of that structural system and the bends in the structures. It's awesome. I
Yeah.
love
Well,
this part.
put a bookmark in that, Alan. So remember that slide and what
Yeah.
you're talking about with that complexity. If you go down a couple slides, there's a geophysics slide that shows our big egg shape on the Winnie Lake that we're all pumped up about. Right? Go. So there's the geochemistry lighting up around the outside of Winnie. Then here's the big Winnie intrusion, right?
Right in here.
Okay. Yeah, so there should be another map that shows, I don't know, Steph, if it's in here now, that zooms out further, that shows like that
A
kind of
little bit
regional.
further, right there. That's
Okay,
the
that
biggest
works.
one we have.
Okay, this is the one. Okay, so what's interesting about this is if you look at, we like to play with different kind of ways to play with the data. So when you take this inversion model and you turn it to just black and white, right? Like everybody likes colors, but I don't really care about the colors. In fact, you can see a lot out of this data if you just look at it in black and white.
Hmm.
And that's or on a grayscale. That's good enough. Actually, probably better.
It's
Investors
it's way
and
less
people,
distracting.
yeah, they like to squint at these sorts of things and they get impressed by them. But the reality is, honestly, in black and white, these are phenomenal. So one of the things that ends up sticking out as you look at that is you actually see what looks like I'll again oversimplified a little, but it looks like you get these structures almost radiating out around the intrusion. So imagine a flower. So it's like a flower structure, right? And imagine like the petals on a flower. So you have a rose, and it's like the petals on the rose, right? So as you get away from this structure, you got petals, and you get these blocks of rock and these different structures. So what we need to figure out now is okay, is all the interesting mineralization right butting up against the contact, or did it get driven out to some of those rose petal structures? Where are we going to get the best bang? We don't know the answer to
folks,
that.
here is the Pluton, okay? And what Denny is talking about is that the contact of that Pluton and the country rock is around this egg-shaped feature. And you'll notice that there's a bunch of geophysical anomalies surrounding that. Now, having experience with a great geophysicist, and I always share this, I say that he always told me, Allan, sometimes the magic works and sometimes the magic doesn't work. And he stressed the importance of the kind of survey you're doing for what you're looking for, and then confirming it with a drill hole. The truth machine needs to tell you that this isn't just pretty pick colors on a map. And that's what's
Exactly.
happening here, folks. These aren't just pretty colors. They're being confirmed with drill holes. They're finding sulfides. And another thing I find really interesting, Denny, is the magnetite. Okay? The magnetite is near your mineral, what you're looking for. And the beauty of that is magnetite is very magnetic. And so you can use the magnetite as a marker to help you narrow the search for what you're looking for.
Well, the beauty for me when we saw the massive magnetite in with the massive sulfides, when we saw that magnetite in there, Allan, that's a telltale sign that this is intrusion related. Telltale.
Okay.
That right away is
So,
probably one of the most obvious indicators scientifically that we're not just dealing with your regular old VMS deposit. This is intrusion related. We wouldn't have had the magnetite if it wasn't.
so tell people what intrusion and Pluton means, which is in this egg-shaped feature.
Okay, so traditionally in the camp, people knew about this egg. Okay, I mean, nobody cared about it, but it was a known feature in the region. Everyone thought. So basically, imagine like in the crust, you have a big pimple. Okay, and inside the pimple is granite. It's like a granite rock, right? Like that's the zit, right? And it
Yep.
punched up through the crust, and then the top is scraped off of it, and you're looking at kind of this big egg shape, right? So
Yep.
this is the top of the zit. And I probably could pick a less gross thing to describe it as. But anyway, sorry, a zit will work.
Okay.
And basically, it's tombstone granite. Okay, we'll call it like it's granite countertop granite.
Okay.
And nobody else really thought it was anything else, right? There was some sampling that was done on top of it, and many people walked over it. It doesn't have tons of outcrop, but it was never really recognized as anything but just tombstone granite, so nobody cared.
Okay.
So exploring around stocks, so we would call that a stock, right? Is another term you'll hear for this. So you can hear Pluton, stock, etc. Those are all the same terminology. And so you'll often hear Abitibi geologists saying like exploring around stocks is a good idea. They found mineralization around stocks, right? And staking it around them. And a lot of prospectors will go and look around them. And the reason for that largely is back to the crack thing. We talk about rheological contrast. I'm going to use a really fancy word.
Woo!
Okay, so what that means is that you have when you have these big intrusions that come through the crust, okay, they either exploit zones of weakness They push the rocks around, they displace rock, and rock doesn't really like to be displaced, and so it'll break and crack and it'll bend and whatever. Now obviously these things are under intense temperatures and pressures and things, but when they cool, they sort of don't like those new orientations. So you end up with a lot of cracking and a lot of, like, imagine like a stone in a windshield. You end up with like a lot of cracking and stuff around these stocks and these plutons. And if you're in an orogenic camp where you're right beside the Cadillac Larder fault and you've got all these fluid pathways now, you end up with this sort of structural, there's these areas of structural preparation, breaking and cracking around some of these stocks. Now, the other thing is the stocks are heat engines. So we're going to talk sort of
the non-geos out there. Well, how you can think of that is sort of like it creates a path of least resistance so that the fluids can then make their way up from deeper. Did I get that right, Denny?
Yeah, for the most part, sure. Yeah. I mean, again, guys, there's going to be nuances. I'm sure if there's a geologist listening, he's going to be pounding the table and saying, Denny, but this is for the, caveat. We're going to go over simple for the average Joe here.
Yep.
And really, like, whatever. It works anyways. So you have the cracks. Then if you're close to a big sort of fluid highway like the Cadillac, then these places are good, right? Now, another thing that happens around stock and the surrounding rock is a chemical contrast. So now we talked about the structural contrast, this big hard lump of pretty much crackless granite surrounded by a sea of cracks in other rock, and you get fluids exploiting that. But oftentimes these types of intrusions are iron rich or ferromagnesium mineral rich, right? So you get an increase in their iron content, right? And when we talk about the types of fluids that carry gold around, right? These are high pressure, high temperature, acidic fluids. They're very acidic. They're basically like sulfuric acid. Okay. So you can imagine, like, you have this sulfuric acid. Now, think of this like a cup of hot chocolate. If you have a very hot cup of hot chocolate, you can dissolve a lot of chocolate in the cup.
Right.
But if I suddenly take that cup of hot chocolate and I stick it in, or hot cocoa for the American listening, and I stick it in the freezer and cool it down, what will happen? What will be at the bottom of my cup?
Everything will sediment, fall down.
A lot of chocolate, right? Yep. Because under pressure and temperature, now we can't adjust pressure because it's a cup of hot chocolate. We don't have a machine to adjust pressure, but we can adjust temperature. But they work the same way. So under pressure and temperature, more can be dissolved in that solution. More chocolate can go into the solution and stay suspended in the solution. But when you drop the temperature, okay, and you drop the pressure, that will fall out. Now, when that fluid hits cracks, what happens? Well, it's under pressure, right? So it hits these areas with lots of cracks and the pressure drops off a cliff.
Okay.
Right? So the pressure goes off a cliff. It's like, what's all this open space doing here? And boom, you get precipitation, right? Now, the same thing can be true with temperature. We see this in epithermal systems like volcanoes. You heard the term porphyries, that sort of thing. And they have temperature windows where certain minerals will precipitate, like 400 degrees C, and copper comes out of the system, example. So the other thing that can happen is something can neutralize the acid, right? So carbonate rocks, calcium-rich rocks can neutralize acid. We get this in skarns, right? So you end up with calcareous rocks and carbonates, and you have this acidic solution. Boom, it's neutralized. It drops its load, right? The coffee falls out. The chocolate falls out of suspension.
In this scenario, folks, he's talking about the metals drop to the bottom of the cocoa cup.
Right, and metals are cocoa in this example. So when you have a system, another thing that can drop it out is iron, right? Because what happens if you take iron and you react it with sulfuric acid? What do you get?
I don't know. What do you get?
Pyrite, iron pyrite. You get sulfides.
Magnetite. Okay. Yeah.
Right? Or you get oxidization, right? Iron plus acid will rust. If you took a rod iron, and you stuck it in, sulfuric acid, it would rust. You'd pull out a rusty rod, right? Because it's
Yeah.
oxidized. So oxide iron rust. So basically, some terms we throw around like hematized. You sometimes see these altered rocks are all reddish, in color. And it's like, well, yeah, that could be potassium doing its thing, or it could be iron. Now, what's interesting is sulfides, right? We always hear the term sulfides. Well, the sulfides are basically take that sulfuric acid, neutralize it, and it will precipitate sulfides. So chalcopyrite, pyrite, pyrrhotite. Pyrrhotite's iron rich.
Sphalerite.
Sphalerite, all of them are all sulfides, right? Magnetite, right? So like a lot of these different minerals will precipitate out. So one of the interesting thing is in close proximity to this intrusion, okay, we now have all of these solutions kind of falling out of solution. Now, are they falling out of solution because they're reacting with the intrusion, or are they coming from the intrusion? Are the solutions themselves in part coming from that intrusion crystallizing? And so I'm going to interject a whole other concept. So again, sorry, Allan, and to your audience, if this is too technical.
You're answering questions that I've had, because one of the things that I've talked about or thought about is that when you talk about intrusion related systems, now does that mean that what's around the intrusion is where the fluids are coming up and getting in, or where does it come from? Does it actually come deeper from the intrusion itself? And I think that's what you're starting to broach here.
Well, yeah, and I think so. One of the things that happens when you have an intrusion, right? So it doesn't like it's like magma, when it first comes into place, and then it slowly cools down, and when it cools down, it contracts, and it kicks out a lot of fluids, right?
Yeah.
So the fluids come out of that cooling ball of magma, that zit. As it cools down and crystallizes and turns into your, granite countertop, it basically is kicking out solutions, right? And so sometimes these granites, so to speak, are pregnant. They have metal content in them when they cool and crystallize. And that we would call a porphyry, for lack of better explanation. That is a porphyry deposit. Right. So we talk about these big porphyries with, that's what it is. It's a big cooled ball of, big giant zit that the metal is still inside of it, pretty much. Right.
Right.
And then sometimes epithermal deposits are formed outside of a porphyry as it cools, because it's kicked all of that metal out, and that metal's found its way into the cracks in the surrounding rocks. Maybe it reacts with a carbonate, and then you got a term called skarn. And then maybe it reacts with, a set of cracks, and now you've got epithermal veining, right? And so what this intrusion-related concept is that the truth is, we don't know. It could be a blend of both. It could be fluids swirling around, right, from in that rock that came into contact with that intrusion and said, oh shit, I don't really like the chemistry of this thing. I'm going to drop my cocoa powder right here, right now on the edges of it. Or a more likely answer is that it was the fluids coming out of the intrusion, reacting with their surrounding rock, and depositing right pretty much on coming out of there. Now, the question is, how far did that fluid go? If it went really far, we might not have an economic deposit. But if it stays close, right, then you might. And so based on the geochemistry that we did and the geophysics, it suggests that our fluids are pretty close to, the intrusion itself. But you see this big triangle shape out to the east on the side of the intrusion. So if you look at the intrusion, how the geophysics makes almost like a triangle um, on your image. So if
Right
you
at the
go
edge
like,
of the map where it says highlights, that's the peak of the triangle.
Oh, right here,
Yeah.
up here.
see how there's like a kind of a wedge opening in there, like it's like a
Yep.
big old, like it's like a big kind of triangle in there. So that's where a lot of gold is here. And so the gold is actually situated further out away from the intrusion. We're seeing elevated gold values a little bit further away.
So,
And the
folks,
other metals are closer.
what Denny is describing is zonation. Okay, so depending as you go away from where something came from, you get metals dropping out of the solution in a it's called zonation. And basically, what it means is like if you were thinking of a volcano that comes up and blows all this magma out. If you're close to the vent of the magma, you'll have certain kind of chemistry and certain kind of metals. As you go further away from that volcano vent, things change. And so that's a little bit about what Denny is talking about here.
Yeah. Now, lucky for us, we're not the first people to discover something like this, right? We have other models to look at. So if you look at the Upper Beaver complex, only a few kilometers away, which Agnico is putting into production, right? Upper Beaver is a similar model. It's an intrusion related thing. Now they've got a zone they even call the dog's breakfast zone. So I'd be lying if I said it's going to be super easy to figure out and super simple, right?
So this is what Denny is
Geologically,
talking about here. Upper Beaver, again, right?
So while you have that slide up, we are doing some really interesting stuff with geophysics right now with ALS Goldspot, or I forget what they're called now, but they'll always be Goldspot to me. If you look at the Larder Lake Cadillac break and you look at the distance from that break to Upper Beaver, and you look at the distance from that break to Winnie Lake,
Ah,
it is almost identical
equidistant.
off of those curves.
Holy moly.
Yeah. And
well, not
so,
just that, the intrusions themselves. So if you were to make that box that says Walsh Mine disappear and the box that says Upper Beaver and FP zone disappear, there's a massive intrusion under there too.
Ah, wow.
Yeah.
yeah.
And so like it's the same thing. Now, if you go over now again, the alteration's the same, the metals are the same, the mineralization looks the same, the rocks look the same, everything about it looks the same as what they have at Upper Beaver. So now
Yeah.
one of the interesting
The only difference with ours is there's definitely going to be more zinc based off the sphalerite that we saw. And our grabs have had more silver than what they had. So that's the only difference.
Now, if you go back up to the Quebec map that we were yakking about earlier.
This one? Or
no,
one more
up higher.
Right there.
Yeah, there. Okay, so look at that big giant intrusion over there on their side. It's pink, right, on the Quebec side. And look at all the deposits around the outside of it, right? And so some of these are like the best mines ever. And I'll give you an example. Like Agnico, I was having lunch with Sean Boyd, and he told me an absolutely wonderful story about the discovery of La Ronde and what happened. And so basically, they were discovering.
By the way, folks, La Ronde is sort of the Agnico maker. La Ronde was crucial.
It is 100% the best mine Agnico's ever owned, and verbatim from Sean Boyd himself. If he could get another La Ronde, if he could find another La Ronde, it would be the best thing in the world. He would love that more than anything.
Okay.
So if you scroll down just a smidge, hold on, scroll down just a smidge and look at the metal contents of what La Ronde is: copper, zinc, silver, gold.
Wow. It almost sounds VMS-y.
Well, that's what these things are. They're not VMSs though. They're on the edges of these intrusions. So if you look at Quebec, they're on the edges.
So it's almost like that. What I was talking about earlier about the vent and a VMS is related to is like a bunch of small volcanoes. So you're saying that it's kind of like the similar kind of zonation? Is that what you're talking about?
No, so okay, well actually, you know what? This is like the best thing we could be talking about, as much as this will annoy the shit out of your audience,
I
maybe,
don't care.
is VMS. Okay, so
Denny, a lot
VMS.
of people don't know my secret sauce is when I do these interviews, I'm trying to learn. And if I and I base it on what my pilot friend said to me one time. I said to him, you know, when you're flying a plane, do you worry about all the people in the back? And he said to me, no, not at all. I said, if I look after me, I'll look after all the people in the back of the plane. So I kind
Right.
of do my shows the same way. I'm trying to learn here. I'm a sponge. I love this. I don't care. If you guys got the time, I got the time.
Okay. All right. Well, perfect. Well, okay. Well, let's talk about that VMS terminology for a sec. Okay.
Yes.
So VMS means variable massive sulfide. Okay. That's what the acronym means. And it was invented way before we understood the science of any of these types of deposits. That's a very key point. That terminology to describe the type of mineralization that is massive sulfides, right? Massive pyrites, sphalerite, pyrrhotite, any
All the ites.
sulfur, yeah, sulfide, right? Mineral, and anything kind of looks like fool's gold, right? That stuff. Um, that that term refers to that, okay? And basically, in like the 1980s, after that term's already been used for decades describing deposits and things around the world, sometime in the 1980s, and you know, they figured out that holy shit, if you go down to like a rifting zone where the Earth is pulling apart, like a mid-oceanic rift being a good example.
You can think
Now
of
there's
Mariana's Trench, folks, but these are the big rifts that go through the ocean and separated things like North America from, or a perfect example is South America and Africa. I was a kid, Denny, and when I was in school, I had attention issues. And the way I kept myself out of trouble was I would focus on something. And so in my schools, they always had these maps of the earth everywhere. And I in 19 I was in grade 4, so I was 9 years old. This is 1970, before anyone was even talking about plate tectonics. I would look at these things and I'd say, man, they look like they fit together. So one day I got a tracing paper and I went on the globe and I started tracing the continents. And my teacher came over to me and said, what are you doing? And I said, well, I've been looking at the world map for a long time, and it looks like all these continents fit together at one time like a big puzzle. And so she goes away, and about 8 teachers come and they ask me, what are you doing? And I tell them, well, it looks like all these continents fit together. And so I'm drawing them out and I want to put them together like a piece of puzzle. And, years later, and when I started learning about plate tectonics, which really came around in the early 1970s. So I was seeing something on those maps before scientists were even talking about it. But then the crux of this story is that if you look at South America and you look at Africa, they fit together. And the reason that they're apart is because of what Denny said was one of these rifts that goes cut through them and then they separated from each other. And that's what Denny was talking about. Sorry for my interlude.
Yeah, no, it's perfect, and well, that's a fascinating story. But I think it actually is a good one, Alan, and adds a lot to this because it's kind of what we're going to go with this. So as insane as he's absolutely right. Plate tectonic theory was literally heresy.
Absolutely.
Okay, when it first what came out, like the geologists, no, it can't be like this. Probably with some English accent and fancy sweaters, and saying that this mustn't be true. And so it's like Galileo, right? Like everybody's a heretic. So anyways, the similar thing sort of happened, right? So around the same time. So there's this rifting zone and these crusts are, the crust pulling out, and then you've got magma squirting up in between, right? Because it's like, well, if the crust is splitting up, what's shooting out in between? Well, it's, got to be. So basically, adjacent to that process happening, right, you get all the gases and the volatiles and stuff like that are coming out of the magma. And basically what's happens is you get these chimneys, right? These, I'm sure everybody's seen them on YouTube or whatever. If you don't, look them up.
You
They're
look
called
up
black
for black
smokers.
smokers, folks.
Yeah, black smokers. And so there'd be these big chimneys, right? And they form,
And they're
and
happening to this very day, folks. Every
they
day.
happen constantly.
Yep.
Yeah, and like, I mean, like if you go to Yellowstone and like a geyser is like all not really all that different than that, but basically it's happening underwater. And so, and as soon as the stuff comes out and comes into contact with cool water, seawater, it just like crystallizes and stops and precipitates. And then so you get these chimneys that grow under the ocean, and then they grow so big and tall, and then they collapse, right? And so what ended up happening is I was actually I worked in Norway post Falconbridge days with a guy who did his PhD. I think his name was Anil. He did his PhD on black smokers, and they actually had affixed like a hibachi barbecue with like an underwater, submarine thing onto one of these black smokers, and it filled up with massive sulfides. So when they pulled the barbecue, like the hibachi barbecue back out, the entire inside of it was coated, and it was full of massive sulfides, like copper and zinc and all types of things, right? So, and they were looking at this, and actually Rio Tinto was really big into this. Like they were like, there was a period, I don't know if it was Rio or Teck, and there was a period where they were talking about all the underwater resources that they were getting around the world from like staking all these, Teck. From all these like international waters, cracks that they were laying claim to, and so it's anyway really peculiar. But then everything massive sulfide, okay, so every deposit that was like quote VMS became of black smoker origin. So it didn't matter if you were like not even close to a rifting zone or anything. Everything was collapsed black smokers.
Yeah.
So then everyone's trying to fit the black smoker model.
So,
to
folks,
these
I want to interject here. And this is why I love what Stefan said earlier about going to places where things are not supposed to be. And a lot of great mines have been found in Canada, worldwide, in places that they weren't supposed to be. And so Denny's touched on something that's close to my heart. I love, like, for example, diamond fields, resources. They were looking for diamonds in Labrador, Newfoundland, Labrador, and they saw some alteration, some rusty colored rock. The geologist, being geologist, said, "Hey, that looks like something. We better drop down there and take a sample." And it took the geologist to twist the arm of the great Robert Friedland and others inside the company. Let's assay this. Came back with great grades. They said, well, we want to spend more. Well, you're looking for diamonds. You're not looking for massive sulfides. So just do your job. So they didn't, but they never let it die. And ultimately they were able to convince, because of the grades in the samples, hey, let's drill this. And the rest is history. And that is, folks, and the reason I'm bringing this up is be careful when you hear people talk about models and categorizing things and putting it into a nice little box, because Mother Nature doesn't work in nice little boxes. Sorry, Denny, I had to go on a rant there.
Absolutely. And sometimes to explain things, we have to simplify them into boxes.
Yeah.
But sometimes we end up with projects that have overlapping themes, right? You have the fault with the crack with the gold, plus the intrusion with the copper and the sulfide. You got a lot going on. Anyway, to digress. So yeah, everything became black smokers, and then people got fixated on black smokers. Now I'll go back to Sean Boyd's story quickly because this is a good point to insert this. So Sean mentioned early days they were, having some trouble with La Ronde early. And so there was basically like a thin sort of vertical shoot, right? Pencil of massive sulfide on the edge of this pluton,
Okay.
right? Now, at this time, the pluton, no one really cared about. It wasn't really part of the theme, but they just had this VMS shoot, right? And they were down there, and but they knew, the geologist said, "Hey, there's a lot of smoke between the contact of the intrusion and the shoot."
Okay.
Like, and at the time, I don't want to speak out of turn, so I'll spare some details, but I think they're pretty cool about the story. But I'll let Sean share that on his own at some point publicly. But basically, and maybe there's enough daylight in between the events, but basically, there was some financial squeezes coming down on Agnico, and a lot of street doubt about the ability to grow beyond the pencil. The pencil of La Ronde, the first one, was like, once they mine out this pencil, there's not going to be any more pencils. It's it. It's over.
Yeah.
And his geologist is going, actually, I'm pretty damn sure there's more pencils. I think that as long as you stay along that contact, you're going to bump into more pencils.
Okay.
And so they took a flyer, okay? And what they did was they drove a drift, an underground exploration drift, out along the contact. Bang, they hit another pencil, and another one, and another one. So they found more shoots along the edge of their egg,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
And so they had this one big fabulous shoot, had a mine designed around the shoot. It was rather small, and people were dismissing it. And then they kept chasing along the edge, and boom, there's another one, and another one, and another one. And it then becomes one of Canada's most legendary mines, and basically nucleated Canada's most legendary gold company.
Into what
right?
it is today. The house.
100%. 100%. So what we're saying here is we've got possibly a pencil. We've hit massive sulfides.
Yep.
Who knows? Is it a pencil? I don't know the grades yet. We're waiting on that. But what we do know is we've got the smoke, and we've got massive sulfides on the edge of our big intrusion.
Right.
And we've got geochemistry lighting up the edge of it all the way around of this egg. And we have magnetics, which you're looking at, also lighting up all around the egg as well. And so we got a hell of a lot. We got 17 kilometers of possible pencils.
Sitting all around.
How much? All around it. So some of them are going to be bigger than others. Some of them are going to be juicier than others. Are we lucky enough to hit one? It's still a big haystack, right? We're doing all the things we're going to do to, do we have one now with what we've got? Like, is it manifest into, being a bona fide big mineable pencil, right? We don't know. But this is the intrusion related thing. So we're back to where this isn't collapsed black smokers. We're around this big giant egg, and the solutions mixed from the rocks around it to the egg, and whether they came out of the egg or they were remobile, I don't know. It's intrusion related, the end, and it's got the same metallogeny as the other intrusion related deposits that matter in the camp.
Wow,
so for us,
awesome. When you explain it like that, Denny, I'm getting goosebumps because, you're talking about La Ronde, man, and you're not just waving your arms, because look at in the drill core. You can see the sulfides, folks.
Yeah, we hit some nice stuff. And Upper Beaver actually too. Well, I mean, is Upper Beaver La Ronde? No. But who cares? It's a great mine. Right. And so it will be a great mine. It's being built as we speak. So like at the end of the day, the nice part about our land package and our geography here too, Allan, for your listeners,
yeah,
is that the threshold of what we need to find here is not very big to matter. What I mean by that is,
folks, what he means by that is you're not out in the middle of nowhere. You're right in a camp, and you're right where this is mining central, if you will.
Yeah, you don't need to find a 10 million ounce deposit. You don't need to find a 1 million ounce deposit. If you found a 500,000 ounce deposit and it was good grade right there,
Yeah.
it's gone. It's sold.
Wow.
It's going to be mined because look who's around you. You've got Macassa, like what, 5 kilometers. You could throw a rock and hit Macassa, which is 25 million ounces, 22 million ounces later, whatever it is now, something crazy. Well, the Golden Mile, Macassa, right, Hargraves, Lakeshore, that whole little cluster of mines right there, that's 25 million ounces of gold.
Holy moly.
And
Well,
so
you're
you've got,
not,
and
so you're not in an area that you're talking about small. This is elephant country.
oh, sure, but if you find something small, it matters. I mean, all these mills, they have all the mills running, the tailings are there, like everything's running. Like they all need feed. They can blend, like, they'll take the material, right? So whether we find another, if it's more organic kind of veins, like Macassa, like just high grade gold stuff, which we have no shortage of on the project, and we make some ounces with that stuff in our drilling, or we hit the jackpot with like a Larone situation, or even if we hit like a baby Upper Beaver. I mean, all of those are huge, tremendous wins, and they're worth far more than what $27 million market cap is. Now, the
Yeah.
question is for you and your listeners is, do you think with $10 million, we're going to get closer to our goal of unlocking a truth on that? Or are
Without
we
a
going to get
doubt.
farther away?
Without a doubt, you're going to get, well, you gotta, when I look at this, it's all about like following the breadcrumbs to find the bread. And you got a lot of breadcrumbs there, Denny. You've got the geophysics. I just kind of going through to, so here's the geochemistry, and here's all your hits, folks, all around it. So that's one layer. The geology is another layer. The structure is another layer. The Pluton is another layer. Now you go to another layer, which is your geophysics. It's confirming all of these layers are confirming each other. And then you get down to my favorite layer, which is the truth machine. The truth machine spitting out some nice looking sulfides there, did he?
It is. It for sure is, and it's in the intrusion and outside of the intrusion, which is cool. Now, the
That's
other thing.
interesting.
So the other thing that's neat too, worth mentioning there, just on your story arc, you were just going through with the soils and the geophysics. Like one of the most asinine things about this project, but also one of the most encouraging things about this, is that, and I guarantee nobody listening is ever going to believe this, but I'm not a liar. Like this is true. If you go back up a few slides, that's literally the order of operations, right? We did broad brush geochemistry, and the outside of this tombstone granite, nobody cares about it. Everybody in town, no geologist cares. The outside of it lit up. Okay, that's true. With
Yeah.
all the goodies, right, on the outside of her. Then we cross-referenced that with the regional geophysics, and then we saw that lit up. So on your next slide, then all the geophysics lit up. Okay, now here's what's this is the part no one's going to believe. That old drill hole was a data discovery after the fact. So we were
Oh,
going, holy
wow.
shit, we've got this big intrusion, because that slice of land didn't belong to us. So we didn't cover that with our geochemistry survey.
Oh, wow.
So that little piece, we had the geophysics over it, but we didn't have the geochemistry over it. And so that little piece didn't belong to us. And so we went, holy shit, the outside of this big egg's lit up. And then, holy crap, it lit up on the geophysics too. And then it was like, guess what I found today? It was like Stefan found it.
Yeah.
He's like, guess what we
Boy,
found?
Stefan.
He's like, I found a historic filing from 1989, and there was a drill hole on the bottom side of the egg with 2.6% copper. What is it?
2.8% zinc, 17
zinc,
grams of
17
gold,
grams.
silver, a gram of gold over 22.5 meters.
I went, get the fuck out of here. I go, really? That's actually down there? And I go, nobody ever, you know?
So,
And he's like,
folks,
yeah, I don't know.
this is
I mean, that's
crazy.
what I found.
This is kind of doing things where your science, layering your science, is confirming everything. So here you see
100%.
a geophysical anomaly, okay, on the outside of this egg. And they didn't know it was there. They did the geophysics, they did the geochemistry, and
The outside of the egg lights up.
and then all of a sudden they felt, oh, there's a drill hole down there.
Now go, if you want to believe me, go to the geochemistry image. Let's see if Stefan put what a circle there just for fun. So he put a circle there, Steph, shame on you. So that circle there on the south side, we don't have geochemistry coverage in that spot.
We don't.
Ah,
So you can
my
see there's a
guess-
gap between basically that bottom corner was what we brought in. So it's an L shape like that.
Basically, what'll happen is that as they continue doing sampling down here, these are probably not, they don't stop at the edge of where the samples are taken. I guess I'll say it that way. I don't want
Exactly.
to wave too much.
Yeah. So
the
I
truth
mean,
machine worked pretty well there. I don't think we have to sugarcoat that one, Allan.
There you go. There you go.
yeah, but it was a little
Wow.
cheeky. But yeah, so that was actually purely a discovery, which to me is like, holy shit, that's like insane. And we were already talking about the intrusion related model just based on the geochem and the geophysics. It was like right away, I was like, holy shit, this thing's intrusion related. And we were talking about that. And then
And that's no small thing, because before this, all of this area was thought of as VMS, right?
100%.
So
100%.
here
And
again, folks,
any showings in this area were VMS showings.
Yeah, so all those gray ones to the south that you can see on the screen there, they're polymetallic VMS is what they're listed as. And that so that, like, again, all these things are pointing in the same direction, and you just start unpicking it and you're like, wait a minute, there's way more here than what's being shown. And the crazy thing is when we talked with the previous operators, they had explored that just strictly as like a black smoker. And so they basically drilled right underneath it, right to the east. Everything they did was away from the intrusion. And
yeah,
they
kept chasing it further away because there was a big crack. Like they had like an IP structure. They had a structure that they pulled out of their IP or something. There was like an old, or an old IP survey or something here, and it had like a resistivity. I don't know. There was like a chargeability anomaly or something, and there was a limit, and it goes from like east to west almost away from the intrusion. And they basically fenced that off. So they had their big hit close to the intrusion, which was that hole. And then every other, they followed like the crack, and they drilled it just like you would drill a structure. And, the further they got away, the less copper was in the holes. And
which is
like the ones that were
what's supposed to happen, folks. You then transition to zinc and lead and silver in a VMS.
Right. And then the closer to the intrusion, you end up with like
copper
full of smoke. Like from top to bottom in the holes, you got a lot more smoke.
Wow.
Right. So there's like numbers in them. And so all we needed here, actually, that's not true entirely. So they didn't sample the entirety of the holes.
Oh,
right. So there was a lot of gaps in the sampling. So what we needed to do is in this drilling, what we really care to see here is, do we have top to bottom prolific smoke? That was one of the things. We don't have that old core to sample it or even look at it. So we wanted to see what this stuff first looks like. And then we also want to see, do we have top to bottom smoke when we're close to the intrusion? Because if you get top to bottom
talking
smoke,
about volume, folks.
Yeah, you're in that, you got that ocean now of potential around the edge of that big egg.
I
Now
got
you
it.
know you got a big like buffer zone where you're going to get at least smoky numbers around the edge of the egg, and it's just finding the pencils of good stuff. The finding the pencils is spectacular. That'll be, do we have one with the massive that we have? Will that evolve into a pencil? But if the edges of that intrusion are giving off the smoke we're looking for, and the metals and the minerals and the alteration products and stuff that we're looking for, from the metals and minerals and alteration perspective, it's a home run. Uh, we want to see the metal content now. So what does that look like? What does that smoke look like? Is that smoke good enough? Maybe that smoke is good enough to be ore,
Okay,
right?
got
You
it.
never know.
Well,
So
it's
if
we see it down here. This is ore, my friends.
yeah, but
That's
that's a 22-meter section, Allan,
exactly
of like a 60-meter hole. So what does the other 40 meters of that run like?
around it.
Is it
Yeah,
is it like 40 meters of
a
point
half a
two?
percent.
Sure, we'll take it, right? Like
Absolutely.
we don't know. And so we just want smoke. That's what we're looking for, smoke.
So, well, I mean, I get goosebumps when I hear a good story, Denny, and that's my goosebump indicator. And it's just going off right now. When I hear things like Laurent and a 17-kilometer egg and what's around it, and that you're layering on the data. You got it, your geophysics and your geochemistry and your structure, regional geology, and your now the truth machine. They're all pointing towards that this could be something very special.
Well, I want to just take it back, and I thanks Allan, and I want to just take it back real quick to a comment where we parked it earlier. So you asked me for a reminder and to write
Oh
it
yeah,
down, and here
yeah.
it is. So, I mean, for those of you still listening, if you made it this far, I hope you did. And I hope you liked what you heard, and I hope you're compelled by the treasure hunt that we're embarking upon. And it's real. We're very gracious to be fueled to continue this hunt.
Yep.
But back to a point Allan made about marketing and telling a story and engaging people and getting excited about a treasure hunt. Another wise investor, again, I'll drop his name one more time, Eric Sprott, he always
Yeah.
told me, he said, you got to sell the sizzle and the steak because the steak's not just enough. And so when you have a great project, that's the steak, right?
Yeah.
But the steak ain't nothing without the sizzle. You need to sell it. You need to promote it. You need to be able to convince and get people fucking excited, right? And if
That's
you
what I
can't get
try to
people
do
excited,
every single day.
100%. I know you do. And like Stefan with this project, with the video series, check it out on YouTube. The Treasure Hunter series is outstanding. You get a front row POV seats into the ups, the downs, the highs of the highs and the lows of the lows, the ups and the downs, the letdowns and beyond. That's what makes it exciting. And if you're in that, you can watch week to week, get excited with us, learn as we learn. Holy shit, this looks amazing. It sucks. We never, we missed it. Okay, well, moving on. We still got, B and C. If that was just a press release and it said, and you talk about target A all day,
I'm good at
and
writing
then
press releases. I've done thousands of them, and I'll tell you, folks, you cannot do with words what you can do with pictures and videos like this. Like you can't write enthusiasm. You can use words that suggest enthusiasm, but without, there's no goosebump detector in a news release.
100%. And when you look at like when your only medium of communication is a PowerPoint and a news release, right? You're communicating like, okay, let's say target A. Let's say around that 17 kilometers, all of those knobs of geophysics, those little pearls that are around that big intrusion, plus all the geochemistry, each one of those is a target, let's say, right? So we got target A, B, C, D, E, F, G, right?
Yep.
So all we do is talk about target A, target A, target A, target A, trenching at target A, sampling at target A, right? Then we go to drill target A. Target A sucks. We missed. No results at target A. Oh, but it's okay. We still have B, C, D, and E, and F, G. Nobody gives a shit because they read about it in a stupid, boring press release that no one's ever going to read. And at
And they
the end of the
don't
day, the only
understand.
time you don't understand, and you're never going to get people excited about targets B, C, D, E, and F unless they're like in it with you.
No, because
You
the
know,
stock goes down, it means it's shit. Move on. But
right. But
hold
if they're
on,
with you and
folks.
engaged, they're like, hey, listen, A didn't work, but we still got B and C. My favorite one's C. Can't wait till they get to that one.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
Like all of a sudden, you know, like the party goes on, and that's part of taking people into. They want to be part of this journey with their money. Like they want
Totally.
to be in it. Some of them don't. Some of them don't care. They're just getting a tip from a friend that this is a good stock to buy. But some of them genuinely care.
Yep.
And
Well, and
if
Stefan, that's why I appreciate so much the work that you're doing to bring your audience into the process. Because, like what we're talking about right here, Denny has sort of given people an idea of what we're looking for. And it's kind of like you're in the process of proving up the thesis. And
Bingo.
just because the A or one, it doesn't mean that two, three, or 10 isn't the next Laurent. You just got
Exactly.
to, but if everybody is just focusing because of what Denny was saying about we're only talking about target A right now, target A, target A, target A. If target A doesn't work out, that doesn't mean that there's not a Laurent hiding over, 5 kilometers over. And so your efforts to bring the audience into the story and inform them, that's what I'm all about. And I wish more companies were, but kudos to you for doing a great job with that, Stefan. You're what do they call that? A model citizen there for the mining industry. Keep doing more of it because I love it.
Thanks,
oh,
Allan.
I love it too. I'm Steph's biggest fan with it, and he's done such a good job with it. And it's so regular. He's got her ironed out. The process. It's really not. You know, he put a ton of work in to get here, and I'm not trying to downplay the work. But what's nice is to all the other CEOs out there listening, if you care and you want to do something like this, it's achievable. It's doable. It doesn't take all of Steph's time.
No.
He's not completely consumed by that.
Well,
And now that the
actually,
guys in the core
it's
shack are used to collecting video and all
it,
that, it comes together pretty easy and
for a
quick.
little bit of time, the service that it creates for your audience and the company. Like how many companies, Denny, have we looked at that have great targets and they go and drill one and it sucks and they're done. And that's a phenomenon, folks, of why Newmont did a study where they looked at all the mines throughout the world and they analyzed who did what work to get to the mine. It was the seventh company that found the mine, folks. And it comes back to what we're already talking about. You drill target A, oh, it sucks. If you're a junior and you don't do a good job of informing what the big picture looks like, everybody gets into the little picture. If the little picture sucks, they're gone. In comes the next one. In comes the next one. In comes the next one. And then somebody finds a mine. And but now when you do this kind of framing of the story, now your investors are going, hey, okay, they didn't hit on A, but I don't know about B, C, D, E, F, and G, and beyond that. And let's give them some more money. Let's keep this going. So I like that you did this financing to keep the story going, Stefan. No matter what comes out of these assays, I don't know. Denny doesn't know. You don't know. We could be sitting on, we're seeing those assays and going, hey, it's game on, or we got
Exactly.
smoke and there's good.
Well, and to me, so like we thought long and
It's
hard
game
about
on
this,
anyways.
and we had a lot of meetings at Beaver Creek, and we got convinced that this was the right thing to do. And what it came down to was, okay, so let's say we basically laid out the situation. So it's okay, so if this happens or this happens, so let's say these holes run an incredible grade, they're over a long width, and there's lots of smoke. It's fantastic. If we have a financing overhang because we only had $1 million in the bank, what's going to happen to that stock? It might go up a
Nothing.
little bit. We might drift a small amount, It
But
might
everybody
retract.
was saying then, when are you going to do a private placement? When are you going to do a private placement?
Exactly. And where
100%.
and then we go, okay, so let's say we wait and the results aren't as good as we hope they are, then what happens? The stock could trade back down, who knows to what. Okay, so let's say we take this opportunity. There's a lot of really positive sentiment. We have a lot of support at Beaver Creek. People are like, yeah, I want to put money into this. Just tell me when. I'd prefer if you do it now. And I was like, okay, well, let's do it now. And so by that, it's like, okay, if we have great results, there's no financing overhang. We'll have multiple millions of dollars in the bank. We can go. If you want this stock, you have to buy it on the open market. And the alternative, okay, so if these holes don't turn out as good as they are, we still have massive numbers of opportunities that are still highly viable on this project. And now we have the capital to be able to move these things forward. So we're protecting the company, we're not being greedy in that. Okay, so if we had put out the results and they had run because they were really positive, we could have raised more money potentially at a higher
But
valuation.
it would have been capped because everybody's looking at your treasury and going, "Where's your money? You're going to have to do
Bingo.
it.
100%.
I'll wait for
That's
your
the problem.
financing." So, yeah, I mean, I don't understand people sometimes.
Well,
Yeah.
it's funny. I even got caught up in it because I was saying to Steph, like as we're kind of going, after the sort of the visuals came out and the stock had a run, we knew we needed more money, and it was like, well, I was saying from the whole time, I'm like, just wait for assays. Let's just wait for the assays. Once we get the assays back, I'll feel better about raising money with us. Like it'll be just a cleaner place to do it, and where the stock goes, where the stock goes, and we'll raise there, right? And and then when there's some orders come forward and people are like, hey, listen, I don't really want to wait. And you're kind of playing all this up against itself. And that point of like, with a depleted treasury running, like how it's not going to run, it's not going to run out of control with $0, like, or whatever, $1,000,000. Like everyone knows you need more than that to get serious with this. And so, and if the money is willing to, and the money wanted to, then, my apprehensions are, you know, let's say unjustified because they're willing. They want to take
I'm
that chance.
I'm in the same camp, and that's why I rolled up my sleeve and made some phone calls and helping out, bringing some of my friends that are interested in the private placement through my network,
Well, thanks for that.
because I'm looking at it and I'm going, okay, you got this big egg, you got the geophysics and the geochemistry all around it, and now you got sulfides. It's game on, folks. I don't really care. Of course, I want to see great results, and I think there's going to be some really good numbers in these results. But I'm looking at that big Laron story, and that's why I'm comfortable telling my friends about it and putting my own money into it, because this is a what, 20 some $1 million valuation company that's looking for something that's an elephant. Game on for me, baby.
Well, I think after we file this, this financing away, I think we announced what 7, and my hope is to upsize that. I think if we can get enough interest in, we will. To whatever the exchange will let us take,
Oh, I forgot
up
the
to
other
up
part, Denny.
up to say 10.
The other part was that Stefan and I did an interview a while ago, and we talked offline about what was facing the company. And he said, yeah, it would be nice to see it firm up. And I said, well, I'll throw my hat in the ring and I'll try to help out. And I've been doing that ever since in the market and with the financing because I believe what you have here. And I know what special looks like, folks. I got a pretty good nose for this stuff. I know what an elephant, potential elephant looks like, and I know the steps to get to the elephant. And every step along the way is layering elephant. It's walking and talking like an elephant.
It better damn well be a goddamn elephant, Allan, or my, uh,
We'll have to go into
but but I want to be fair. But I want to be fair to shareholders too. Like I got to be fair to the market and to the retail investor because again, I'm not in the business of giving advice people what to do. I'm not a
right,
professional financial advisor, right? Neither are
right.
you or Steph.
No, no.
But I think we have to be honest and say, sometimes guys, there is things in this business that look and smell like elephants that aren't.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
and sometimes they don't work out. This one looks pretty good. My bet's on this one, obviously, right? I
Yep.
wouldn't be here if it wasn't. But if I didn't believe it. But
Yeah.
at the end of the day, from time to time, that is a thing.
Yep.
And I think the problem is, though, too, is when you have a big elephant that looks and smells this big with like that much of a halo of mineralization around the egg and, 17 kilometers of this stuff, like it's a lot of ground to condemn, right? And
Yep.
so at what point, how many holes would it take you to believe that there's an elephant there? But at the same time, you have to ask yourself, how many holes does it take for you to believe that there's not? Right? Like, what does that look like?
Yep.
If I drilled like one hole every like 1 kilometer around that thing and I did not hit like a pencil of like own quality, does that mean it's gone? It's not there?
No.
Like so I think it's easy for the pundits and the poo-pooers out there in the world that like to shit on people and junior mining that like to say that everyone's trying to deceive. It's like think that through. Like if you have a massive area like that, how many holes would it take you before you're like it's not there?
Well,
Let's just walk away here and give it
let's
away
look
for
at
drop it.
Eskay Creek and Hemlo, for examples. They were 100 holes into them, folks. And they had a crazy promoter, Murray Pesum, who kept on telling everybody, I can smell gold, folks. I know it's there. I'm keeping on going. And everybody gives the credit to the geologists out there and says, oh, it's the geologists that found it. Well, folks, old Murray Pesum kept on raising money to give those geologists the money to drill the holes. And
Yeah.
so, these pencils are not easy to find. I think he got one already, and there could be more. And we're just going to have to figure out, is it smoke? Or does the smoke lead us to fire? Or did you already hit fire? We don't know yet, folks. But at least we're trying to keep people informed of what we're looking for here and what could be possible. And we just got to do more work to figure it out, folks. But so far, so good.
So far, so good. I think the Treasury, like if we end up this closing out this financing with somewhere between sort of 7 and 10, I really fingers crossed for the 10 side, and I think it's looking pretty good. But you never know. Like raising money is sometimes challenging. But that's another thing too. I was reading the message boards, and it's fine. It's message boards, and it's people. Like there's a lot of idiots out there. But like people are, like who's this company diluting me and fucking like diluted from
Oh,
what? The losers, like diluted from what? Like what
exactly.
are you talking about? You
And
can't like
that
to another
same
perfect
guy,
example.
that same guy, say you get great results, that same guy's going to be saying to you, you got to raise money.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm not
Yeah.
going to buy
And
it.
then you raise money and it's never high enough and it's
Uh,
too much money and
why
it's not
didn't you
enough money.
wait? Don't you believe in the project? Blah, blah, blah. Folks, it takes money to find treasures. Okay. And
100%. That's my point.
Stefan said some really important things there about uh, plan A and plan B. Okay. And he's got a job to do as the CEO of the company to make sure plan A and plan B can both go through, regardless of whether you hit on plan A or you got to move to plan B. And
You
that's
hope for
two,
the best and you plan for the worst.
exactly. So I'm, well, how can I speak more about being behind it? That I've been out telling the story as hard as I can. And I'm
Unsolicited, by the way. I need to
For
clarify
free,
that. This is
for free.
unsolicited. I have not paid Allan a penny. I appreciate what he is doing beyond anything. It's awesome, but this was not because, KLDC was like, here, Allan, here's a pile of money and do the like Allan just gets it. He understands, and that I can't say thank you enough.
Well,
uh,
but here's the thing. This is important because Allan, that's true. Allan did this completely of his own, unsolicited, unpaid, the whole thing. Okay. Now, Allan needs to make money too. He does. So there needs to come a time, right? And, you know, who's going to keep funding Allan to do what Allan does if somebody does? Like, he's got to be rewarded for it. So this is a sort of dichotomy of this Mexican standoff of things.
Exactly.
But but I think we got to do something here
Well,
to bring Allan in.
we'll figure that out down the road, but I'm just happy. I love finding great stories and being part of telling that story and helping out where I can. And I always tell people this, and I don't know if they believe me, but whether I'm a shareholder or someone sponsors my work or the company's just a pick. I've spent 32 years in this business and I've had great mentors and they've helped me to create filters. And every company, no matter where they fall in that spectrum, have to go through those filters. And when I find something that's going through those filters, nobody can pay me for my excitement. My excitement comes from what I see from the science folks. I see the geophysics, I see the large land package, I see the structural story. I mean, I'm excited. I'm not even just excited about the egg. I'm excited about that orogenic gold thing that's sitting not too far away where I see a bunch of structures and I see high grade gold. So when I put it all together, this is a great story and I'm happy to be in early. I've been lucky to sort of pick these things early many times. In fact, my buddy Rob McEwen told me I need to pat myself on the back with my work and sort of show people where I picked a company on a stock chart and what it did afterwards. And I'm not good at promoting. I'm good at promoting KLDC and their project, not so good at promoting myself. But he says,
Oh,
Alan,
Alan, people know. People,
uh,
if Eric Sprott's watching your program, come
uh,
on.
thank you.
Like people get it. They
Oh, good.
respect what
Reading
you're
your
doing.
content. I mean, you do
Good.
really good work. It might be a good idea. And feel free to clip this out of your thing, but it might be a good idea is putting on maybe like a Patreon or something like that, or even like an anonymous one where people could donate
Actually,
anonymously.
they do through my Substack. They
Is there an anonymous donation thing so it's
yeah.
not coming from like something, right? So
Uh,
then you don't because you don't want to get compromised
I
because you can go
don't.
out to the market.
I actually don't. I don't even look at who sent me money. I
Just
appreciate
collect it.
it. I thank them. I'm thanking you right now if you've ever sent me money through my Substack, but I don't like, hey, thanks for giving me money, Joe Blow. I don't even know who
Right.
the Joe Blows are. And
Right.
I'm like, I just keep forging forward. I just push,
No,
push,
it's good. What
push,
you're doing
push.
is good. I mean, obviously, I'm biased because you like our story, but I'm kidding. I'm kidding because before you took a shot at, I've always liked Allan
Yeah.
and your work.
We
So
did a great
it's
interview. I was one of my favorites, Denny, because it was just a couple of guys talking rocks and stocks, and that's what my show's
yeah, for
about.
sure. No, and I've been obviously a follow of your stuff, and I watch the show religiously. So
Thank you,
I
guys.
like your stuff, man. So it's very good.
Stefan, I'm going to let you close it off.
Hey, I just want to say thank you, Alan. I appreciate it. Let's just say there's lots of orders coming in. I'm watching my inbox. Bing, 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 bing. So this is a great spot to close it off, and looking forward to some really good times ahead.
And we'll keep our fingers crossed that maybe this, what walks and talks like an elephant, is an elephant. But we
I
do
hope
know one
so.
thing for sure. Along the way, Stefan and his team are going to show you what they're doing. Okay? That's
Every
all we can.
single step of the way.
Love it, guys. Let me close off. Thank you
Awesome.
very
Cheers.
much, everybody. If you've been through this whole thing, this is a much longer interview than I've ever done before, and I got a sneaky suspicion that down the road, maybe a year or two down the road, people are going to look back at this and go, "Wow,
They
you
were
know,
right.
before the fact, they told me about what they're doing and why they're doing it, and so." It's evergreen content, boys.
Or we jinxed it. Or we jinxed it. Who knows? Yeah.
I got a good feeling about this one. All right, folks, as always, do your homework. I'm only an idea generator and I'm trying to help you with your homework, as did Denis and Stefan today. And do check out their corporate presentation. Look at their news releases. Do your homework. Understand the companies you're invested in, folks, because Denis knows a lot of rich people that have made their wealth. What's a common characteristic, Denis?
Patience, and they all do their homework.
You hit the nail on the head, amigo. I didn't even have to prompt you for that. It's all about doing your homework. Guys like Eric Sprott, that Denny knows very well. He was into Fosterville long before anybody else. And Fosterville was a company maker for Kirkland Lake. And Kirkland Lake ended up getting bought out in the billions because of Fosterville. He does his homework. He's an accountant. He understands rocks better than most rock guys. So do that homework, be informed, understand what you're investing in, because those are the most successful investors. Talk to your financial advisors. Have a great day, and we're going to talk.